How do we know what we know about turfgrass science? Welcome to Turfgrass Epistemology.
How do we know what we know? Welcome to Turfgrass Epistemology. Good evening, everybody. This is the Turfgrass Epistemology podcast and YouTube episode. On this episode, we're going to be talking about university extension programs, and I've got Dr. Shaddix with me. Hello.
Hello.
Dr. Shaddix.
How are you, Scott?
We're going to talk about how do I use extension program. I'm doing good because Dr. Shaddix, I called my local extension program recently, and it was nerve-wracking. I wasn't ready to make that phone call, and I just want to demystify it for our listeners and our watchers today. Hello, everybody. Good evening. It's good to see you. Remember to like and subscribe to this channel. Also, we have a good following on our Monday morning member-only access. So if you want to get into the member-only Monday morning group, there's a bunch of episodes that are available to only the members that I'm excited to have access to as a member of this channel. And then Tuesday evenings, which is right here, right now, is a public access where we go over all things turfgrass. And so hello, everybody to the chat. Hello. I'm a huge fan of this show. I've been listening to the podcast, and so you haven't seen me in the chat, so it's really good to see you guys here. I've been hearing your names being read on the podcast, so Super TA, you know.
You mind if I ask, how did you ever even come across the show? What did it just pop up as an algorithm on YouTube or something, or how did you find it?
I'm a big fan of iron, like you.
Oh, okay.
And I was searching in the Apple Podcasts for podcasts about iron, like liquid iron.
Oh, really? So you actually found it through the podcast platform, not through YouTube. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I think I might have typed in like ferrous sulfate or something like that, and that keyword triggered your podcast. And
there's only a few turf scientists who are as dumb as me to spend years studying iron and turf grass. Who does that? There's no money in that. But for some reason, it's one of those things where it's just like we'll have to have a whole podcast just on iron alone because it just for some reason fascinates me. I can't explain it. It's like people who get obsessed with, spoons or, Rubik's cubes or something. I have no idea, but it's just one of my little things. So it's interesting that's how you found the channel.
Well, I'll say, Travis, you feed our desire for scientific truths and fan the flames of our nerddom. So we are your followers, and we're super excited to be able to say somebody.
No.
Well, it depends. Do you have a good reason for it?
That's true. That's true. I often wonder if people get tired of me saying that because it is the value or the advantage of not being a scientist, the advantage of being a salesman or being someone who can just give you a quick answer and say, yes, this is it. And because scientists almost never do that. And it's like, well, it's a little bit deflating when you ask a question and the scientist goes, well, I don't know. It kind of depends, It's not quite as snappy and quick where you can say, yes, do this. Yes, apply lime. Yes, apply, it's not always the case. It sort of depends on the situation. What are you trying to achieve? And so I often wonder if people get tired of me saying that. It depends, kind of got to look at the whole system.
So if you're new to the channel, this is your first time on, and you listen to this podcast and you come and you listen to this YouTube episode and you get off of it and you're like, I know the most about turf grass extension programs. That's the Dunning-Kruger effect. Okay, so keep listening. You got more episodes to really get to understand epistemology. So let's dive into it, shall we? We're going to talk about extension programs. I got a text message from my dad the other day. He lives in Florida. I know we got some people in the chat from Florida. Hello. He's in Venice, Florida. He's got some zoysia grass, and he's never dethatched his zoysia grass, and you know where this is going, right?
How long has he had it, and how much nitrogen he putting on?
Yeah, 10 years. And so he's having a whole bunch of issues right now. And he knows I'm into this industry. This is my passion, my hobby. I send him pictures of my lawn instead of my kids. It's a problem. Doctor. But I said, call your local turf grass extension, Dad. And he said, I talked to my neighbor.
Oh, well, his neighbor might be a professional zoysia manager. Who knows?
Maybe. And so they tried something that didn't work, and he texted me again, and I said, well, you should call your local Turfgrass extension, Dad. And he's like, well,
Okay.
I talked to my neighbor.
Uh,
And they tried something and it didn't work. And finally,
uh,
I looked up the local Turfgrass extension for my dad. I sent him
mm.
the number, and I said, you should call this number.
Oh, that's
And so,
interesting. Yeah. Good.
so,
Well, so did he do
today,
that?
I don't know.
Oh,
But today I'd like to demystify this for my dad so that I can send him
oh,
this episode, and it's okay. You can
yeah.
call your local extension
Well,
office.
let's get into it. Yeah, for
Let's
sure.
do it. All right. So, university extensions.
Hmm.
What the heck? What are they?
Yeah.
Dr.
Okay.
Shaddix.
So, yeah. I'm glad you started there. So the way the university system functions and works in land grant universities, we went over in the last episode, and part of that episode was how land grant institutions started back in 1882 in the Lincoln administration, 1862 with the Lincoln administration, and that started that when it started. That was the awareness of our Congress in the United States to recognize that farmers and agricultural specialists, they needed help. But that only established the educational component of the land grant universities in the world of agriculture. And then the research component came on in, I think it was the Hatch Act. Was it the Hatch Act of like 1887 or something like that? And that established the research component. Well, then now we have research and we have teaching, right? Education, and we have research, right? All there at the land grant universities. But there was no ability or function of the universities to extend that teaching or extend that research information, the new knowledge they're acquiring, to the public. There wasn't that branch or that function in the system. So it was in, I'm going to get these numbers wrong, 1914. I think it was like 1914, the Smith-Lever Act. In fact, if you're an extension agent and you're listening to this, or extension faculty, and you ever have to deal with these phrases, we're going to have to dip into the Smith-Lever funds. You got to have a Smith-Lever account. Well, that's what it is. It's the Smith-Lever Act from 1914 that Congress passed to appropriate funds from the federal government to support the extension of information from universities to the public. And those funds are often matched by state and local funds. So every state does it a little bit differently, but there's federal, and then there's the state. So let's just use Florida, since you mentioned Florida. They have the federal government, and there's a state of Florida, and then there might be local county funding that goes into a pool that is matched in some cases, matched by the federal government. And so that goes into one big pot that funds the extension office. So it depends on how they break it out, but whether it's the faculty salaries or whether it's the building or the electricity, depending on what it is, from that big pool, the cost and the expense of that facility is funded through that Smith-Lever Act and then the state and local funds. But so now you have the building and you have the ability to have the extension office there. But what do they do? That's exactly what they do, is what we mentioned, is they extend or they communicate the research and the teaching information from the faculty or from the university out to the general public, like homeowners or landscape operators or golf superintendents or saw producers or blueberry farmers or whatever it might be. Cattlemen are a big issue, a big draw for extension people. So imagine, it's easy to look at that now and go, okay, well, we have that resource now, but we haven't always had that ability. Imagine being a cattleman, trying to raise chickens or raise hogs or to pick blackberries or peaches or whatever the case is, or grow grass, and have questions and go, well, I don't know what this is. Well, what do I do? There's no telephones back in the 1800s. There's maybe a telegram or a horse. You put a note on a horse and run it up to the post office or something, but there's no way to get that information or to gain that information. So that's what the extension services provide. They provide the ability for stakeholders who need information. And Scott, it could be information on how to knit, how to sew, how to cook. I mean, all these things that people needed back then and still need today. The extension offices provide that to taxpayers. That's what the extension services provide. That's why they're there.
That's great.
Yeah.
And now we have YouTube.
Yeah, well, YouTube is good and bad depending on what you use it for. But a lot of people will just go straight to YouTube, and they'll try to find information that way. And sometimes the information, as you know, is very, very good on YouTube, very accurate. And so it does provide an extension service in that regard. But before YouTube, there was an extension office and extension agents, and there still are those today. So on that note, we can talk about YouTube and extension, because when you go to YouTube and get information, at least we'll talk about turfgrass. And with turfgrass, it is a crapshoot. I mean, you could get it right, and you could be going to the right source and getting really good information, or it could just be completely erroneous. But when you know where to go get that information from the extension office or from the extension websites, they still could be inaccurate. I mean, anybody can be inaccurate, but the chances are much less that that the extension offices are going to provide you faulty information. But yes, YouTube provides a very similar function that the extension offices have provided over the years. Yeah.
Well, I was poking fun at all the YouTube videos that have fallacies inside of them, but one of the things that I subscribe to here in Ohio is the Ohio State Turf Times, which is it's the extension office of, I don't know, the faculty at Ohio State, and it's fun to kind of have them give me a homeowner information about, hey, it's fall. Here's what you should do. And, it's kind of one way that they actually get someone like me to pay attention to them. So I called the pathologist this summer when I was having fungal issues. I think I was the only one in America having fungus issues this summer.
You got a hold of the actual pathologist, the professor, or
the pathologist? Okay. His name is Todd.
Yeah,
and Todd was like, "Hey, buddy, what you got going on?" I was like, "I'm trying to rotate fungicides, man. I did this one. I'm thinking about doing this one." He's like, "Oh, no, don't do that one. It's the heat of summer. That's got a PGR effect. You definitely don't use that one. Go back to this one." And I was like,
"Oh, you got someone who's really knowledgeable on it." Yeah. See, I don't even know any of that stuff. I'm not knowledgeable in fungicides at all. But that's why those resources are there. And depending on the county you're in and the state you're in, and a lot of different variables, you may be in a position like you where you can go and get a pathologist who knows their stuff. But you might also be in a county that has very little activity, and they may only have one extension agent. And that one extension agent has to answer phone calls from everybody in that county. And so they might not necessarily be a specialist in pathology or whatever question you might have. They might not be that. So there is a great deal of variation in the information that you can get from your local county extension agent. But it doesn't mean you can't go to the professor. In other words, the county extension agents, they're going to specialize in something. Usually they're going to be really good at turf or really good at blueberries, but they're not going to know everything about everything. But if they don't know, they'll go, "You know what? You need to call Dr. Jones, or let me get a hold of Dr. Jones and I'll get back to you," or whatever the case might be. But it sounds like you got straight to the top and got a pathologist who knows what they're talking about. And that's what it's there for. I have yet to run into an extension. Yeah. I have yet to run into a faculty with an extension appointment or an extension agent who is not more nerdy than I am about this stuff. I mean, that's what their career is. Their career is extending or communicating information to the public. So they eat it up. They really enjoy it. Yeah.
For those of you who are listening, like 10 years later, this is like the worst fungus outbreak in, my memory. And this past summer, it was just really wet in a lot of states in America and really hot. And that's kind of a recipe for fungal outbreaks. So a lot of almost 90% of the neighborhood was dealing with some kind of something.
If you listen back to the podcast I mentioned this year, you'll know that I never put out fungicides on my lawn just because I always forget. This was the only year I can remember where I actually remembered to put it out, preventatively too, by the way. And I was like, "Oh, I remembered," and I put it out, and I put it out in the first, second week in June. I can't remember the date, something along that time. And then like 2 or 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, along the same interval time that you would want to put it out again, I remembered again. I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to do it." So I did it. And it happened to be on the exact year, as you said, Scott, everything got wiped out by disease here. Well, not everything, but just a massive, massive disease problem that we experienced here in Lexington. And my lawn's out there just as green as a little emerald out there in the middle. And they're like, "What'd you do?" Like, "I just got lucky. I remembered to finally put it out, So, it was really bad this year. Mm.
I'm seeing a lot of chats come in, and we'll get to the chats at the end of today's show. But I wanted to ask you, Dr. Shaddix, you were at the facility level. What was your interaction like with the extension offices? Did you have a lot of interaction as a doctor?
Oh, yeah.
On faculty?
Yeah, it depends on your appointment. So faculty will have at least 3. Well, they generally will have a combination of one of three appointments, and then they'll also have service. So like if they're an administrator, they might have service, but they'll have teaching, research, or extension. And it'll be a percentage of those three or a percentage of two of them. They might not have all three. And then, for example, somebody might be like an associate center director. They might have 15% administration or something like that. But I had 70%, was it 70%? No, 60% research and 40% extension. I think that's what it was. Or maybe it was flipped back the other way around. So a large portion of my responsibility was extension. And in South Florida, really pretty much south of, well, wow, now think about it, south of Gainesville. There was no turfgrass extension professor south of Gainesville. So yeah, that's it. Yeah. So it's Gainesville and then Jay or Milton, Florida, which is out in the Panhandle, and then Fort Lauderdale. And so I had to cover, a lot of South Florida.
Yeah.
And so my interaction, that's what I mentioned earlier, my interaction with extension agents, center directors, extension directors, these things, have always been extremely good, extremely positive. And I've always been really pleased to see the passion that extension agents and extension directors have on serving the public. They really are servants. I mentioned this to you maybe before the show today or at a previous time, Scott, where think of it as it's a restaurant where you're the customer as the stakeholder, as the homeowner, as the lawn care operator. And when you come into the restaurant, the service that they're providing, the servants, the waiters, those are the extension agents. You are our customer. And I always felt I was your waiter, and I'm here to service you. I am waiting on your needs. And you're talking about being a little bit nervous coming in and talking to an extension agent or expressing to your father how to get a hold of them. That's the way I always looked at it. And I can't speak for every extension agent. I don't know, but I would suspect that many of them would have a similar opinion as I do, is that, yeah, we are here to help people. They feel fulfilled by helping people. And that's the service that they provide. So if you're not calling me, I'll be wondering, well, why aren't you calling me? What have I done wrong? I mean, I'm here to help you, So really shouldn't be any barriers in terms of concern or anxiety to reaching out to an extension agent. Now, I'm not saying every extension agent can help you with every question you have in your house. It's not possible for a human to do that. But they're there to help. And if they don't have the answer, they'll reach out to me as a faculty member, or I'll have a meeting at their facility. We'll have a collective, collaborative event where we'll bring in a lot of professors into that county extension facility, and we'll have a turf show at your facility. And so we've done that many, many times in Florida. We would call it the evidence-based turfgrass management. And would take it around the different extension offices around Florida. And we would have sometimes 200 people show up with some of those shows. In fact, the biggest one we ever put on was in Ocala on zoysia grass. They were having problems in Ocala, and I was up there trying to help them out with it was the villages in Ocala, where the big retirement community they were putting in zoysia grass, and they didn't really know how to manage it well. And so I was up there from Fort Lauderdale, from just so you know, from Fort Lauderdale, Ocala is about 2.5, 3 hours. And from Gainesville to Ocala is like 40 minutes. So I'm like, well, why isn't someone from Gainesville coming down and helping you guys? Anyway, I would go up there and help them and help the extension agents. And I always wanted to have the extension agent with me, because I can go there and help the end user. That's fine. But that's not really going to be as effective as if I help the end user with the extension agent with me to help train them at the same time, so the extension agent knows the message that I'm speaking. Now, the next time someone calls the extension office, they don't have to call me. They can just call the extension agent and get a hold of them, because they're much more easy to get a hold of, and they're going to communicate the same message. And so we did that so many times. I'm like, wait a second, there's so much need up here. We just need to have a zoysia grass symposium. And that's what we did in Ocala. This is going back to 2000, probably 16 or 17, something like that. Room was packed, Scott, just slam packed with homeowners and business owners, saw producers trying to figure out, how do we manage this turf grass? That is an extension program. Faculty collaborating with extension agents, having an event at an extension office with stakeholders in the building. That's what extension is designed to do. Yeah.
Sounds like turfgrass epistemology before the virtual.
No, it was. Yeah.
Version of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, it's exactly what it was. I'm still trying to think about how can I do that now in the position I'm in now to have a little event like that. That'll be for a future show. But yes, that's exactly what it was. We were teaching people evidence-based turfgrass management specific just to zoysia and Ocala. And when we went to, say, Duval County, which is like Jacksonville, Florida, we would have the same type of show, but it might be on, Seashore past Palem, or it might be a more general show in Lee County, Florida, Southwest Florida. So we would tailor it basically on what the extension agent is communicating to the faculty. I'm really seeing a lot of questions in this area. We need to address that. And so there's a lot of collaboration. Your question was, how did I collaborate? How did I work with extension agents? Very, very well. And it's critical that collaboration exists between extension agents and faculty members, because the agents want to communicate the most evidence-based information they can. And when they can't, they feel impotent. They're like, well, I don't know. I don't have the knowledge. I don't know. Well, that's the faculty's role, is to fill that extension agent with the necessary information so that they can communicate it out effectively with confidence.
Yeah. I want to applaud you, Dr. Shaddix, for putting the link to all the Turfgrass extension programs, and in many podcasts and YouTube episodes referring to that local, extension office, and qualifying your answers to some of the questions in the chat as, maybe try this, but I don't live in whatever state.
Okay.
Definitely, give your extension office a call, because if it weren't for those comments, and if it weren't for you posting that list, there's probably no way I'd find Ohio State Turf Times teams YouTube,
Yeah.
So you definitely were the reason why I'm familiar with Turfgrass extension programs, and I would imagine that maybe some people in the chat today are also in that category. But
that's the curse of knowledge. And when you even yourself, when you're a professional in your respective field, you to some degree we assume people know these things because it's common knowledge to you in your profession. You know what you do. And in my profession, it's like, well, of course people know that's there. Well, no, not everybody knows that. We have to acknowledge that. Okay, that's a shortcoming of the people who happen to be good at this area, or you're good at your area. Not everybody knows what Scott knows. Okay, so you gotta back it up, and so I'm glad to hear that you at least got or at least somebody got some use out of that PDF I put, and it's in the description of every video I do nowadays, live videos anyway. So yeah.
So if you're listening and you're wondering, hey, should I put iron down on my grass in November?
Hmm.
Maybe we've got a podcast for that for you to listen to. Maybe it's an episode here on YouTube. You can also call your local extension office. The list is right there in the show notes. Talking about the way I kind of came to extensions. What's broken about the current extension process? It sounds like back in the 1800s, before there was phones, obviously this was working and great, right?
Yeah.
This is the only way to kind of get information. But now you have your chat GPT that you had an episode about, and you got all these YouTubers saying, hey, you should definitely put this throw her down. And oh goodness, what is broken with the current kind of extension process?
Yeah.
And how can we epistemology followers help out?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I don't know if I have a clear answer to it. I suppose I'll give it my best shot, though. Is that one reason I feel that a lot of the other YouTube channels, this is going back 5-10 years ago, really started to grow, and some of them are really good. I don't want to disparage all the YouTube channels. Some of them are very, very good, especially today. There's some excellent YouTube channels that are getting good information out there. But some of the earlier ones just keep putting out misinformation, and a lot of people started following them. And I think it's a little bit of a symptom of the extension problem at universities, and that is universities are slow. We're not the first one to the honey hole catching a fish. We're usually the 10th or 15th or 20th one back because we're slow. It's just a different pace that they work at. And so when you get out in front of it, like a lot of people get out in front of YouTube, they realize, wait a second, these people are following me, watching my YouTube channel, but they need information. I can give them information, even if it's misinformation, to make money on it. And that's up to them. But I don't think that would have happened had the extension programs not had a little hiccup going on. So that's what the question is. What is this hiccup? It's my opinion. Take it for what it's worth, but in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, the faculty and extension agents, I think, were viewed differently than they are now. Now, and they were viewed with a little bit more, I don't know if reverence is the right word, or an appreciation for their knowledge, whatever the case is. Nowadays, oftentimes, especially with homeowners, especially with golf course superintendents, and someone who might be a little bit more knowledgeable, they don't even call extension agents. They don't even know what extension, like you mentioned, what is an extension agent? You don't even know. I don't know what it is. Back in the day, that didn't exist that way. They were the go-to resource. And I think that started to change like in the 70s. I'd have to go back and do some kind of snooping around and look at some of the literature and see how that changed. But I think around the 70s, I know for sure in 1971, that the faculty were not allowed to get any grants. Grants didn't exist really in the same sense they do now. And so they had teaching, research, and extension. And so the money to fund their program came from the department. And that money came from the college, and that money came from the university, and that money came from the federal or state government. That's how it worked. Yeah. Well, that started going away. And when that started going away, faculty needed to divert more of their attention more towards gaining revenue and gaining funds. And extension is almost exclusively an expense. It's not a revenue generator. So what is broke, in my opinion, try to long-winded way of saying what is broke. I don't know if something's broke. It's just changed to where the people who used to spend a lot of time doing extension work and focused on stakeholders' needs now are forced to divert some of their attention towards revenue streams like federal grants, state grants, local grants, because they need tenure or they need to hire a grad student or whatever. And it's hard to get funding from extension. Extension, for the most part, I don't think it needs to be this way, by the way, but for the most part, it's an expense. You're not going to land a $5 million grant for extension, but you'll land one for research, right? And so, those grants that come in, the university gets, depending on the university, gets a large portion of those federal grant monies before the professor even sees any of it. So it's in the university's best interest, and because of tenure, it's in the professor's best interest to focus on grants and grad students and publications more than it is extension. So I think we diverted away from extension as a result of just our progression. I don't know who did it or how it happened, but it's just we've diverted our attention away. And when we diverted our attention away, there was a niche there that opened up for some, other people to jump in and fill that void. Sometimes they filled it with really good information. And a lot of times, unfortunately, they filled it with misinformation. Now we have a much bigger hole to dig ourselves out of.
Is this confession time with Dr. Shaddix?
Okay.
I actually still watch a lot of the YouTubers that spew out misinformation.
Oh, you do?
From a pure entertainment standpoint, they're entertaining, and I like looking at lawns. And so, is
it entertaining because you know that it's misinformation now, or you would watch it anyway, even if you didn't realize that a lot of it is just
watching people cut grass?
Yeah, there's some satisfaction there,
especially in the middle of the winter time. Like I'm looking at my snow, and I'm like, man, I just wish I could go out there and just cut some grass.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll just call my extension instead and ask them a bunch of questions. Hey, in March, when this stuff starts, growing again.
Yeah.
So extension visibility is declining. The dollars aren't there anymore.
Yeah.
It sounds like this is going to be. You talk a lot about like how papers are funded, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's funded by a company who's trying to sell a new organic fertilizer, and that company is not going to approach the extension officer. They're going to approach maybe the university, right? And so am I hearing that correctly? Is that kind of the breakdown? Is the grant funding and maybe some of these other kind of trials that are being funded by companies?
Well, the companies aren't going to approach the university. In very rare cases would that happen. It'd be very rare for that to happen. The companies will have relationships with professors, and so the professor and the company will directly negotiate the materials and methods and the fees and all that stuff. But the university holds an overhead on all grants. So let's say the federal government, let's say the professor lands a federal grant for $1 million. Depending on the university, this is completely university dependent. The university will take half of that if it's a federal grant. So $500,000 is going straight to the university, and the professor will only be able to work on the remaining $500,000. Other universities might be as high as 80% or 90%. Other universities might be 40%. State grants are a little bit different than that. State grants might be only 26, 27, 28% the university would gain, and the professor would be able to keep the rest. So it's completely dependent on where the money comes from. But with companies, again, completely dependent on the university. With companies, they will negotiate and work with the professor, and that fee is much less. That fee usually from universities is in somewhere the 20-25% range, sometimes lower depending on how the money comes in. And so the professor is going to gain and be able to utilize more of those, or a larger percentage of those funds than if they landed a federal grant. So it's a strange dichotomy, or a strange situation. But none of those companies are coming to fund an extension. Hey, can I give you $40,000 to build an extension program down in South Florida and see how that helps our product? That never happens. And that's never happened. Now, I would argue that extension programs that exceed the normal expectation of extension, so let's say the zoysia grass symposium, I can do my extension program all day long and never have that zoysia grass symposium.
Right.
That's I don't have to go up to Ocala and put on 200-300 seat venues and bring in all these vendors. I don't have to do that as a faculty. I can perform my services in South Florida and never do that. So when I extend, or when I develop a program that is beyond the normal boundaries of what an extension program looks like, I can charge for that. And I think you should charge for that as an extension faculty member. And we did charge for that. So as an extension faculty, or in the past, I was a believer that extension can be a revenue source. And when I left UF, it was a revenue source. We were generating almost, well, not quite, but almost as much money from extension as I was from these spray for pay, like these companies coming in just want you to put something out and see what it looks like, these squirt and lick little grant things. We were bringing about as much money from extension as we were from these little squirt and lick projects. But myself and my colleague in Florida, we spent a lot of time getting those gears running. It took 2-3 years to get that extension program running. Suddenly people started realizing, wait a second, UF's got a turf school? Not a school like a university, but I mean, they're putting on a turf school, like a 2-day turf event. And they're doing it here. They're doing it in Jay. They're doing it in Gainesville. They're moving it to Duval County. They're doing it in Tampa, Orlando. Oh, and then suddenly people start to hear about it, and people start to show up, and people start to pay for it, and then the seats get filled up, and then you start to, so extension programs can be money generators. They can be revenue generators. But it's not generally seen that way from an administrative perspective. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
Yeah, it all comes down to the common dollar and the common man.
Yeah.
Research, we're funding research here at Turfgrass Epistemology. Can you give the team an update on where we're at with the GoFundMe and what we're doing?
Oh yeah.
With
Well, I don't have it pulled up right now, but yeah, we do have a GoFundMe if you want to contribute to Turfgrass research and publications. And we have right now 5 research locations that we're doing this study at, and some of all that's funded through the channel. But you can go to GoFundMe.com and then just search Turfgrass. It'll pop up Turfgrass Epistemology, and you can donate and help support what we do. And what we're doing now is, and I'm presenting this. I'll mention it again at the end of the show. I'm presenting this at Salt Lake City in what's today? In 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, I can't remember the date exactly, November 7th or 8th or something like that. In Salt Lake City, I'll present the first 2 years of data from Lexington, and 1 year in Florida, and 1 year in Missouri. And we have one location in Indiana that started this year, and we have another location in Alabama that is taking his samples now as we sit here today on October 28, 2025. He's taking his samples now, and he'll start next year. And what the study is about is it's about figuring out what soil test philosophy, interpretation philosophy would result in the greatest agronomic and economic benefit to the end user. So when you take a soil test and you look at it and it says you need to apply 10 pounds of K, well, that's based upon an interpretation philosophy of the value of the numbers. And so there's many different ways to interpret that number, and we're using that, and we're determining, we're measuring which one of these interpretation philosophies is most economically efficient and agronomically efficient. So those funds for Turfgrass Epistemology, a lot of the funds are going to support that project at the moment.
I like it. So let's pretend that the listeners and the watchers and the viewers of today's episode, we're all extension agents.
Okay.
And you finished your research project. What is the importance of regionality? Like, we got Bulgaria on the call. Can they use the soil test?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah. So if everybody's an extension agent, what I would do is I would have what's called an IST, an in-service training, and I'd bring all the extension agents in, usually once a year, but every now and then it's once every 2 years. And I would explain exactly this, answer this exact question. Like, how can this information help you in Bulgaria, as an example of a county, or in South Florida, or North Florida, or in Eastern Kentucky, or Western Kentucky? How can this information be bottled and used in your situation? And so I would bring them in, and this particular study that we're working on, if you want to talk about that specifically, it would be, we have soil tests, and they'll usually, so extension agents have folders and folders and folders full of soil tests that they've looked at over the years. And I would ask them to bring them in, and I would use that as an example and say, okay, show me your soil test and show me what the interpretation says and how much it says that you should apply. And they would bring it in, and I'd say, okay, the information we're gaining now is showing that this is going to apply enough. Your interpretation is definitely enough. Okay. When you have 100 parts per million potassium, Mela 3 in the soil, and it's saying apply more, you definitely got enough. Okay. But what this project is showing now is that, okay, not only is that enough, you don't need to apply any, and applying more could actually harm your turfgrass. And that to some degree, I'm going to get on a limb here, but to some degree, that's irrelevant of location. It is not irrelevant of turfgrass. It is dependent upon turfgrass. But if you got enough potassium, you don't need to apply more. That's what I would tell all the extension agents who come in the room. Now, the question is, what is enough? That's the interpretation philosophy. What is enough potassium? Well, it might be a little bit more potassium in one soil than another soil in terms of what you would need to apply, or what the soil test would come back at. If you have potassium-bearing minerals in the soils in Eastern Kentucky, but you don't in Western Kentucky, all those things can be addressed in that, what we would call an IST, or an in-service training. But that's how I would manage extension agents with a project that I just generated. In fact, we just published a paper. This channel just published a paper on Malic 3 sulfur, and in Kentucky. And I tried to get the extension agent, or the extension soil testing laboratory at the University of Kentucky years ago, to make an adjustment to their phosphorus recommendations and their potassium recommendations, but they wouldn't do it. And they didn't have any evidence to support their recommendations. That's a whole nother story, whatever. It was a big whatever. And he said, well, you need data on Kentucky. You need data in Kentucky, on Kentucky soils. Okay. I was like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to argue with you. So now I went out and did it with sulfur in Lexington, in Fayette County, on Kentucky bluegrass, using sulfur. Now, are they going to be using sulfur on the Malic 3? No. They're not going to use it. So the point is, sometimes it takes an inordinate amount of energy to move the needle, even when you have all the evidence. It's not as suddenly as if all this suddenly snaps and everything changes and everybody follows it. It does take effort and to move that. Sometimes you feel like Sisyphus, pushing that boulder up the mountain, and then you get up halfway and it falls back down, And so, but
Sisyphus.
Okay, that's like, well, anyway. But that's how extension is supposed to function, is to have faculty develop research and generate research, and then extend it to them, and then tailor it to their specific needs. And who knows their specific needs better than them? I have to listen to them, see what their needs are, and then figure out a way to tailor it and communicate it so that they can communicate to their stakeholders. Yeah.
I'm more of a mouse, king, and cheese guy, like little kids' books.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah. The King, the Mice, and the Cheese. Did you ever read the little kids' book that I wrote on that?
Yeah. We have okay, so we don't have extension agents, and you've done a really good job. I want to applaud you, Dr. Shaddix, over the last 3 years of offering up your calendar appointments to essentially be the doctor and the extension agent. And so, can you tell the audience about what that is, and how to put time on your calendar?
Yeah. So if you do need some assistance and you're like, I don't know where to turn to, my extension agent is here, but I can't seem to get the answers I want, I don't know who to go to, you can always get a hold of me at calendly.com/Travis Shaddix. I think it's probably even a link in some of the videos, but just go to calendly.com/Travis Shaddix, and you'll see my calendar. That's the same calendar that shows up on my phone. Anything that's available, you can select the time. If you're a member of the channel, you'll want to go to YouTube posts and look and find the member Calendly link, because that's a discounted link. And the pro members of the channel, you have a specific link for pro members that only pro members can see in the posts of YouTube. And that one's free once a year. You don't have to pay for it. So it pays for the YouTube pro membership. Just if you're going to have a Calendly appointment with me anyway, you might as well just be a pro member, because it ends up being for free. So you can do that. And then it's an hour. In fact, I just had one today from Aruba. There was a gentleman down in Aruba who needed a little assistance. And so usually it's like, you set it up. If there's a series of questions, sometimes you want to send me a soil test. Sometimes you want to send me background information, some photos or whatever. sometimes I can't help you. I'll be honest. And if I can't help you, then you can get your money back, no problem. But oftentimes through photos or through your explanations of what's going on, you can kind of describe what these conditions are. And I can at least help kind of keep you on the right path. I'm not going to swear I can solve your problems on a Zoom link, with Turfgrass. You kind of got to be there to look at it. But barring me flying to Aruba and looking at his turf, I'm not going to be able to do that. So the next best thing is Zoom. And so actually, the funny thing is, on his soil test, I'm actually going to use his soil test in an upcoming video where we're explaining exactly how to use Mehlich 3 soil tests correctly and how not to use them correctly. I mean, he was using them fine, but the soil test lab was providing recommendations that were errant. So anyway, all that can be done through Calendly.com/Travis Shattuck. Thanks for mentioning that, Scott. I always forget to mention that.
Soil tests are really hard to get samples for. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone listening has ever tried to shove something into the ground in multiple places and get exactly 6 inches of soil in that sucker, but
got to find a way.
It's not easy.
You got to find a way.
I don't care if it just rained for 2 weeks. It is not easy to get something into the ground 6 inches exactly in all the spots of your yard.
Well, on that note, that's a perfect value for extension offices, because many extension offices will provide that for free. Not all, but many extension offices around in not state specific, in a variety of different states, a variety of different counties will allow you to take a soil sample and bring it into their office for your front or backyard, whatever it might be. And they'll do it for free. The exact same method or exact same analysis that a superintendent or a saw producer would send in and pay $18 for, or whatever they pay for. You can take it to the extension office and get it run for free. Now, you can't take 40, okay? I'm sure they're going to have a limit. But they do allow you to have a soil test done there for free from most extension offices. And in the ones that don't do it for free, you can still go there and get your bag and get the supplies you need and then just return it to the office instead of going to the soil lab itself, which most people don't know where it is. You just go to the extension office, get the bag, take the sample, and go back and drop it off. It is, to be frank, a little less convenient than some of these mail home kits that some of them actually are valid home test kits. But nevertheless, that's the service that extension offices provide.
Yeah, unless they ask you to add more boron to your lawn, in which case maybe you have to question the extension agent.
I should have printed it off. I got some soil tests today. I didn't print it off, and on there it did say apply more boron. I'm not making that up. I was like, you got to be freaking kidding me.
Are we allowed to say boron is for? I don't want to call people names, but there's a shirt. If you actually want to get the shirt, there's a shirt. We have a shirt, right?
You reminded me of everything. I always forget to do this. Yeah, we have a store. This is why I need someone to come on and host the show, because my mind's always 1,000 miles an hour, and I don't ever remember to do these things. But there is a store. You can just go to YouTube and click the store button, and you can go there and find all sorts of goofy stuff.
They recommend boron. Go get the shirt. You'll get some boron on the shirt. Yeah.
I think that might be one shirt that I don't know if anybody's bought yet. It's a little offensive.
Talking about offensive, I have another confession for Dr. Shattuck. So I listen to stuff, and I actually listened to a radio show, live call-in radio show from Nebraska, from one of their county extension agents. And, and I'm in Ohio, but it sounds like some of the advice that they're maybe giving people in Nebraska could apply to me here at Ohio. Yeah. So how much of that is used with caution, and how much of that is it's about the same? I mean, how much does latitude and longitude play into advice from a turfgrass agent? And as maybe you see some consolidation in the industry, how could that be maybe harmful to the advice you get? Like you said, you're in Gainesville and you had the entire southern part of Florida. I don't know if you guys know where Gainesville's at. It's on the north part of Florida. I mean, that was like there's a lot of different types of soils, a lot of different types of climates, lots of microclimates. So how regionalized does it start to get problematic that I'm getting advice from Nebraska and Ohio? Yeah,
I would be careful with that. There are some axioms, if you want to call them that. There's some self-evident truths that are going to be good across the board. Water, like I mentioned, optimize your water. Light and temperature you need to be mindful of that wherever you are in the plant if you're growing plants. Injury, these things are axiomatic. They're not going to change too much. But short of that, within your climate, if you're getting advice from well, let's see. Where are you at again? You're in
Ohio.
Ohio? What,
Yeah.
in South
I
Ohio?
see my Ohio friends in the chat. Hello, Ohio friends.
You're in Southern Ohio or Northern Ohio?
Central,
Central
right
Ohio.
smack dab in
So
the middle.
yeah, if you're in Central Ohio and you're going to say get advice from say the University of Kentucky, that you're in the ballpark, no problem. You're in the ballpark. If you're getting advice from UC San Diego or San Francisco or where it's a desert climate and it's just different world or even University of Florida where there's no cool season grasses, then obviously you would notice there's a difference. Your question is like west. If you're basically still in this transition zone, a little bit north transition zone, and you're going to Nebraska, there's probably some information that is useful to you, but I don't know. It would just depend on the information. Like, for example, a lot of the iron extension information and data that comes out and communication that comes from the scientific literature because, like I said earlier, not very few turf professors are as stupid as I am and going to spend time doing iron. So the iron that's in literature is from usually my program. And so they'll get that literature and they'll integrate it into their extension documents because you're going to spray it out. Temperature is going to have an effect and so forth. But for the most part, there's going to be some useful information wherever you are. Okay, so some of that can be used. Others, I wouldn't do that. Yeah, I'd be really, really careful about taking advice or recommendations, particularly on nitrogen and phosphorus, from Nebraska and then putting it into New Jersey. Because there's laws involved, there's regulations involved, there's all sorts of problems you can run into because you got advice from another state. You put it into your state and thought it was fine. Meanwhile, it's illegal. You can't do that in Maryland, for example, or whatever the case is. So I'd be real careful with that. Not to mention the issues that you mentioned in terms of the environmental differences and soil differences that exist. So it's a long. We go back to the very beginning of the show. It's a long way to saying it's kind of depends on the information that you're getting from that location. I would be very, very careful about that. I would try to stay within your state if you can, because those state extension agents are going to more than likely have recommendations that are legal. Okay. They're appropriate for your location. Whereas if you go outside of that area, I just want to cross-reference that with what you find in the state. Is it legal? Because some pesticides are legal to apply in some states and not in others. Some phosphorus is illegal to apply and not in others. So I'd be really, really careful with that. Yeah.
I'm just happy you brought it back to iron. I mean, I'm in my happy place now. Bring up that ferrous sulfate one more time, man. Just let's keep talking about the iron.
Yeah.
I want to definitely close our thoughts so that we can get to the chat today.
Yeah.
There's less and less extension agents, right? There's kind of less and less opportunity for younger people to maybe even know that this is an avenue for them to pursue. If they're listening to this podcast or this YouTube episode and they're considering being an extension agent, or heck, maybe some of your followers are like, hey, what would it take to I'd love to learn and maybe be an extension agent.
Yeah.
What's your advice to the world, the universe, on how we can maybe restore some of this stuff?
Well, good question. Yeah, if you're looking at that as a career, then you will almost certainly need a bachelor's degree in some agronomic field. It doesn't have to be turf. It doesn't have to be citrus. It doesn't have to be almonds. I mean, it has to be something in agriculture. So you will need a bachelor's degree. Nowadays, many extension agents are getting master's degrees, and some of them are even getting PhDs because they can start moving up from extension agents to what's referred to as a regional specialized agent, where they have more than one county, they have an area that they may cover, or they have a crop that they specialize in. Like they might just specialize in watermelons and cantaloupes, or they might just specialize in turf, for example. And so in order to move up those rungs, you have to have advanced degrees. So I'm sure somebody exists, an extension agent that doesn't have a bachelor's, but I don't know of any. All the extension agents I know have a bachelor's degree. And I'm probably wrong on that, and then if to move up, they'll have advanced degrees. So if you're interested in that, or if you're interested in serving others, or you feel fulfillment out of having a difference in someone's life or someone's livelihood, or having a beneficial impact on human well-being, extension is that. That's what it is. I mean, you can make a lot more money going and doing something in the industry, and there's all sorts of professions. You can make a ton more money at it. Now, but people are wired certain ways. If you're wired as having fulfillment from servicing other people and helping other people, extension careers definitely fit that mold. So that's what I would say to them. Yeah, if you've never thought about it, but you're wired that way, that might be something to consider as an extension career. Yeah.
Last week, Ashani did a fabulous job hosting this episode. Give Ashani some shout outs in the chat.
He did, yeah.
You guys talked about administration a lot, and I'm guessing this episode might catch some of their attention. Let's say you have an administrator on today's show, listening to what you're talking about today.
Okay.
Give a message for them as to maybe what they could do to attract that younger talent and bring them in and get these extension programs some life.
Yeah. Well, my 2 cents is that oftentimes, so the question is, what sort of message would I give to an administrator to gain more interest from people joining the extension careers? I think in academia, at least in my experience, we oftentimes take for granted that we're just going to put a hook in the line, and a fish is just going to jump on that hook, and we're going to land him in the boat and go home. It's just going to happen. We're going to open up a position, and we're going to have 20 people apply, and we're going to hire one, and we don't have to worry about filling that position. I think that's the wrong approach. You don't do that in business very often. You go and you recruit people who you want. You know this person who knows this person. They get referred to you, and you're like, this person would be excellent in that position. You interview them, and you go and find, especially if you're a business owner. If you're the owner of the business, you want to go find somebody who can make you the most money, have the best relationships with customers, whatever the case is. We don't do that in academia that much. We do not go out and recruit people that we know would be really good at extension or really good at research or whatever the case might be. So my message to administrators would be, and not just administrators, but just being academia in general, is look to recruit. Stop sitting in the boat with a hook in the water, waiting for someone to get on the line, and go recruit somebody who you are confident would be good at that position, and fill those positions with key people who you want on your team. That's what I would consider, at least. Yeah.
Turfgrass extension programs. Before we get to the chat questions, where are you going? Where are you going to be at in the next couple of months leading up to the holiday season?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So I'll be speaking at a couple different locations, and let me put this up here so I don't forget. I'll be in Salt Lake City in, November? It's hard for me to even read this sometimes, but I'll be there in the second week at the ASA meetings, the Agronomy Side of America, Crop Science Side of America meetings in Salt Lake City. And I'll be speaking about the economics and agronomics of soil testing. So the project that we talked about, I'll be presenting the data. They'll be the first group to see those data. I think they're very interesting. I'll be talking about that in Salt Lake City. I'll also be talking about the correlation and calibration of the sulfur, the very paper that this channel helped fund. I'll be presenting those data to all the scientists. So those people who might not be familiar with this, the ASA is the venue in which scientists meet. It's a room full of scientists and grad students and serious hardcore, scholars. And you present your information, you present your research, and they ask questions and they critique it. And you get, that's the way in which we communicate. As you mentioned, what if you get the information from another state? Where do they get the information? Well, oftentimes we get it from collaborating and communicating at these meetings like the ASA that we'll have here in November in a few weeks. And then I'll be going from there, getting on in a car, driving to Colorado, doing a few things there, and then I'm going to get on a plane. I'm going to go straight to Pennsylvania. So in Pennsylvania, I'll be speaking at the Golf Turf Conference there at Penn State University at University Park, Pennsylvania. And I'll be there on November, I think it's like 19th and November 20th. And there I'll be speaking on soil test interpretations. Again, talking about, this will be more of a layman's audience, more of a, not a scientifically minded audience. It'll be more for the practitioner. Where I'll be talking about soil test interpretations and how to better interpret those tests. And then the other presentation that I'll be giving will be just basic nutrient best management practices. So in that particular study at University Park in November, at the latter part of November, that's where I'll be talking about iron and manganese and nitrogen rates and these sorts of things that are best management practices for nutrient applications of turfgrass. So Salt Lake City, Colorado, of course I'll hear in Lexington, then I'll be in Pennsylvania. And then in the new year starts, I'll have another calendar of appearances that I'll post, and we'll be, where will I be? Nebraska and I think Virginia in January and February. So that's a little bit about my upcoming trips.
How do we get the tour shirt?
You want a shirt of this? Is that what you want?
I want a shirt
with my mug on it. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. I have a garbage bag in the basement in my chest of drawers, not chest drawer, a chest, like a trunk of concert shirts when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s well, I'll have to get into that someday.
Not today.
Well, not
Chuck
today.
Benzing is blowing up gift memberships right now. Is
he really?
You've noticed, very distracting, Chuck. I'm looking at you're lighting it up, man.
Oh my gosh, he is the best. He is the best. Yeah, he is the best. Chuck is really the best. Sending 10 Turfgrass Epistemology memberships. Ross, Kirklar and Aldo and Big Cat and Alon's. There's just all sorts of new members that Chuck gifted you membership, and you guys can go in and the new members can go in and see all the membership videos. You now have access to the post where you can go get the Facebook post. If you want to join the Facebook group, if you're a new member, you can feel free to go and apply for that. It might take me a couple of days, and I'll have some moderators to help me with that. It might take a day or two to kind of get you in, but just go to the YouTube post and you'll find the Facebook invitation, and you can join the Facebook group and participate that way if you'd like. Man, Chuck is the best.
Chuck is the best, and this is like the Titanic. Members go first. So if you've got a question and you just became a member, type it into the chat. We might get a chance to answer it on today's episode. Dr. Shaddix, if you want to just take a look at the chat and grab some of those member questions, I'd be happy to sit here and watch you ask.
So Mike Conroy says, I called the UC San Diego Extension Office twice. They refer you to a Master Gardener program volunteer network, which wasn't helpful for in-depth info. Now, let me explain this Master Gardener stuff, okay? Master Gardeners take the concept of horticultural or agricultural passion to an exponential level. Okay, they are exponentially more interested in these concepts than, we, as an extension faculty in the past, I would give Master Gardener education events. I would put those on and Master Gardeners would come in. And I'll admit, as an educator, I loved those because, man, they would ask so many questions. I'm like, wow. And I just don't get those questions from typical extension agents or homeowners or lawn care operators. They're just like super, super fascinated with this. It's even more so than I am. So Master Gardeners, generally, they do this as a hobby. A lot of times they're retirees. Sometimes they're not. I've had some young folks in there who are Master Gardeners. They're just really, really, really passionate about gardening and home lawns and landscapes and stuff like that. So if they send you to a Master Gardener, Mike, it's not necessarily a bad thing in all cases, because they might have Master Gardeners, and oftentimes Master Gardeners do. They're required to serve time on the phone, answering phone calls at the office in order to maintain their Master Gardener certificate. So they'll answer phone calls at the extension office for that very reason. And oftentimes, if you get the right Master Gardener, some of them know more about this stuff than I do. I'm like, whoa, how did you figure that out? And they're correct about a lot of stuff. So, but you might get a Master Gardener who's really, really good with palms, and they might accidentally transfer what would seem to be a biological plausibility from palms to turf when it doesn't register. So you got to be real careful with that. The Master Gardeners are really, really good at what they do, but I would be careful with, and confirm the information they give you as actually valid in the world of turfgrass. But if they weren't helpful, Mike, I wouldn't pin that on the Master Gardener per se. It might just happen to have been that particular person. Okay, that's what I would say about Master Gardener. I would say their knowledge level probably is a little bit lower than an extension agent, but their passion is many, many times higher. It's unbelievable. It's really, really impressive, to say the least. Let's see what else we got here on
I'm glad
questions.
Mike brought that up. That was a great question. I actually talked to a master gardener today, and she told me all about the Missouri Master Gardener program through Southern Missouri University. And I was like, all right,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah. It says, this is Shawnee says, these extension agents are overloaded. We have 4 for ag and 1 for horticulture for Dallas County, which has 2.6 million people. And what Shawnee's question here, inside his question is a topic that I didn't mention, is extension agents will often be categorized or identified as ag agents or hort agents. And in his case, he has 4 ag agents and 1 hort agent. And that 1 hort agent in Dallas County will be responsible for all the homeowners' questions in Dallas County. And then above them would be the extension faculty and so forth. It's just that the extension faculty have other responsibilities along with extension, where the extension agent has nothing but that. Okay. So when you have 1 hort agent for 2.6 million people in Dallas County, it's a little thin, right? Well, they have 4 ag agents. So, the ag demand is probably much greater. And this feeds back into the last episode where I was talking about it's from the taxpayers, the end users, why these positions exist. There's no faculty at these, no ag faculty at least, at these land-grant universities that exist in the absence of taxpayers and stakeholders who need them. If you don't need turf people, the turf faculty will disappear. The administration will make sure of that. I've seen it firsthand, okay? So the same thing goes for ag and horticulture agents. If the homeowners aren't speaking up, if they're not calling, not the extension agent, the extension director or the chair or the dean saying, we need help. We need a turf extension professional. We need another hort agent. We only have 1 hort agent for 2.6 million people in Dallas County. I know the ag people need help too, but we need some support here. We're not getting our question, but you need to speak up is where I'm going with this, Scott. So I'm glad Shawnee mentioned this. You as a taxpayer in the United States, as a taxpayer in the state of Texas, and as a taxpayer in Dallas County, if they're not getting their needs met for turf or home lawn care, they need to speak up because the chairs and the deans, they don't know unless you call them or send an email. They don't know. And so if no one's calling them, no one's knocking on their door, but you got 45 cattlemen knocking on your door, I don't blame them if they put the tax line, the faculty line in ag. Take it out of hort and put it in ag. Got all these ag people knocking on my door all the time. That's kind of how the system works. So thanks for
Shawnee asked that question because I didn't know that we were under the horticulture side of things. So that's good.
Yeah, horticulture is a subset of agriculture. So everything's in the College of Ag. And then within the College of Ag, horticulture often refers to things like things that often don't bear fruit, not always, but often don't bear fruit. So, for example, there might be specialty horticulture, which would be like maybe strawberries or tomatoes. That sometimes they'll delineate that further. But generally, horticulture will think of landscape plants or any plant in your community or whatever that does not bear fruit or is not harvested. Oftentimes, that's placed under horticulture. Yeah. Here's the boss, my wife. We need to find a way to show the value of extension again. Is it via creative ways of generating revenue, or can we ask part of grants revenue for information sharing? So that's more of I'll interpret what she's asking. So what she's saying is, do you need to just figure out some way to get different ways to get funding, or is there a way to basically cost share it out from other grants? And the answer is both. So you can actually write and oftentimes this is a part of federal grants, research grants, where you'll say, okay, we're going to do $1 million grant, whatever the case is, and we're going to look at this particular area of soils or something, whatever. We're going to look at bill bug research for zoysia grass, whatever. But so we're going to do this research. This is how long it's going to take, and we're going to have a timeline. It's going to take 4 years, and in the third and fourth year, we're going to institute a new expense for extension to communicate the information that we've been gaining the first 2 years. And this expense is going to include hotels and travel and food and lodging, and it's going to, the cost of actually putting it on the extension event. So you can actually include the extension into, and oftentimes it's favorable to include the extension costs into quote unquote research grants to communicate that out. Yeah.
That was an insider baseball question. I love that question. I thought the question was be like, why isn't this show over? Where are you at, honey? But she's like, no, I work
Yeah,
for a
she should.
university. I know how to ask these questions. I know how to get grant funding. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And oftentimes nowadays, like there's things called the SCRI grants, which is especially crop research initiative, that are ag grants that Turf is able to actually find a way into and receive funds for that. It's sort of been slow the last couple of years. I might be mistaken, but I do think, I'm not on those grants, but I do think some of those funds are set aside so that the faculty can meet and discuss the results and figure out a way to communicate that. How do they best want to use and communicate the results of those projects out to the public? I think, I could be wrong on that, Scott, and in public, but if I remember correctly, parts of those grants include those expenses. Yeah.
I'll read two of the chats. One says, smash that like button. And the other one says, I'm in the CIA. And I cannot confirm nor deny either of those, actually. So, yeah.
Next question from Curlyhead Do says, or from Shawnee says, can extension programs sell products like fertilizer that help fund them? For example, 20% of mill organite can go to the state's extension programs. Okay. That opens up a whole nother can of worms within the university. Okay. I can't answer that question for every state because every university is going to handle that differently. Okay. I would argue that while it's not set up that way, Ashani, first of all, this is an excellent question. And we should put this question at the beginning because extension programs are often not thought of, they're not thinking of it as a revenue generator. I did. And when I came to UK, we were performing certain services and I was seeing, almost every good idea, I rip off from somebody else. And I was seeing other colleges at UK provide services to the public and charge them for it. I'm like, well, why can't I do that? I can renovate someone's green. I can renovate someone's yard. I can have students go out there and teach them how to do that and charge a homeowner to do that. I can spray their yard and teach the students how to do it correctly and then charge the homeowner a fair fee for that. I can do that because that's what dentistry does. That's what cardiology does. That's what pulmonology does. All these other places are doing the same thing. So I actually started that. But it wasn't a product, Ashanti. It was a service. When you deal with products, you're going to start dealing with offices at the university that are going to want royalties or want IP off of that. They're going to want intellectual property off of whatever products you're going to generate and sell. So I do think you can sell products. In fact, I know, for example, one of the largest money generators at the University of Florida is a glaucoma drug and a termiticide. Those two products were created and generated at the University of Florida, and they sell those products to the public. Not the university. They have to find another company to sell the product, but it can be done, Ashanti. But that's a lot of hoops you got to go through with products. But with services, I think extension programs and faculty who are listening to this and students who might end up being faculty or listening to this, I really think we're missing the boat by not offering services to our stakeholders at a lower cost than, say, an industry would. So we're not really competing with the industry per se, but we're providing that service to help educate our grad students and help educate our undergraduate students for things like aerification or for overseeding. And we go out with students, we show them how to overseed. The homeowner gets their lawn overseeded. Let's say they were going to have to pay $100 or whatever to do it. Well, we wouldn't charge that. We would charge something less because we're out there with students. It's going to take a little bit longer. We might mess up, all those things, this sort of thing. But we could charge for that service, educate the students, the homeowner's happy, the students are happy, the university gets money, the faculty gets money, and it's all through extension. I have yet to hear a good argument why we can't do that. And so I did that here, and I started that here at a high school football field up here northeast of Lexington. They needed to redo it. I said, I can do that. I gave him a quote, did the whole thing. And I said, let me know if you want me to do it. I'll come here, I'll redo the whole thing, kill it, and then reseed it and do the whole thing. I said, but it's going to take a little longer. I'm going to have students. Told them the whole thing I just told you, Scott, okay? Yeah. University of Kentucky, in the meantime, a couple months later, closes the whole program down, shuts it all out. And then I get an email from the the coach there at the high school field saying, yeah, we want you to come do that. I'm like, sorry, man, they shut the whole program down. It can happen. I think if somebody wants to pick that up and run with it, I think the extension programs can find ways to generate a revenue just like the other colleges at the university are doing right now in every hospital on a university campus. They're doing the same thing now. We would just be doing it in turfgrass rather than in medicine. Okay.
I'm super happy that Chuck put Gatorade in the chat because I was thinking like, Shawnee, this is like the Turfgrass version of Gatorade. Let's go. And it should be iron. It should be an iron.
Well, they
product.
do. Well, universities do have products. Like they even have some fertilizer. There was a fertilizer product that the University of Florida had going back 10 years ago that there was some talk about using at some point, and I guess they shelved it or whatever. So it can happen. I'm not saying it can't happen. It can happen. But it's not as if the extension person would sell it. It's the university would create it. And then they have to find some sort of arm or company to actually sell that, basically a distributor to sell that, and a manufacturer probably to manufacture that. But the university they don't want to get in the manufacturing distribution business. They want to get into the royalty business is what they want. And so, but it can be done. It definitely can be done for sure. Like for example, coleus and blueberries are huge royalty money makers at the University of Florida. Huge. I mean, you look at any coleus you have in your landscape, it probably came from the University of Florida. And the professor that breeds those coleus plants gets a royalty, gets some revenue off of that, and the university gets some revenue off of that, but they don't actually breed them and sell them. They have a distributor and a breeder that does that now. Does that make sense? So it can be done. But there's just not many turfgrass extension programs that think that way. And I don't know if a product would be the right way to go, but a service would definitely be something to consider, I think.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, I think it'd be I think it'd be really interesting.
What else you seeing in the chat there?
Let's look for one more, if I can find one more, and then we'll call it.
Anything about ferrous sulfate in the chat?
Yeah, there was one here, but he was just joking. He was just joking. It says, what does he say? Carpet Bomber says, I had True Green visit me and they promised they would get my lawn even colored. It had brown green. I told them the magic of that would be rain, and it was. Talking about iron.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's what he's talking about. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They do that organic 26 whatever percent iron treatment. It definitely turns your lawn brown.
Yeah.
And then, rain makes it go away.
So I think that actually wraps it up. I think, unless there's anything last.
I'm super excited we got a chance to talk about this today. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah.
And thanks for your years of wisdom, and maybe we'll have some extension agents right here, or at least some master gardeners that come out of this show. So all those that are here and contributing, thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.